There's a phrase that you're familiar with, misery loves company. In fact, there's this band called Soul Asylum that I enjoy, and they have a song called Misery. And the lyrics say, they say misery loves company. We could start a company and make misery. Frustrated Incorporated. Now, they do say misery loves company, but I think more accurately, misery craves community. When we are hard up against the difficulties of this life, one of the greatest things that we can do is remind ourselves that we're not alone in it. When we experience times of grief, when we witness suffering, when so much feels beyond our control, we need to know that there are others in this with us. And one of the greatest lies that we tell ourselves is that we are alone, that we are the last of our kind, that no one else feels the prompts we feel, cares about what we care about. The act of being together actually makes us think differently. We are pulled from the thought patterns that exist in isolation. I may have been thinking quite different thoughts as I walked into this room, but immediately when I was in the presence of other like-hearted human beings, those thought patterns were derailed or redirected. I was given new information that changed the way I perceived myself and this day. We aren't pretending when we're with other people, we're just getting different feedback. We are getting redirected into a possibly more hopeful place than when we started. We think differently in community and we act differently in community. It would not be appropriate for me to be here in a fetal position with a party-sized bag of barbecued potato chips. But that's where I might be if I were not here in community right now. Sometimes we need someone else to help us find the answers or to simply sit with us in the questions. Today, we're going to gather for a time of mining the shared wisdom of this community. Often, I will share a message when I'm here, and I'll have a time called, "What are you thinking?" afterward. But usually, it's 20 minutes of me, and then about 3 minutes of you, and we got to get going because we got to get on to Cracker Barrel or wherever you go. I'm going to give you 3 short bits of message, but I want between those and around those for you to share what you are experiencing, seeing, feeling right now. I want those of us gathered here and those gathered online to use the thoughts I share as a place to jump off of. So the first question I have for you is, what are you doing right now to stay sane, to remain hopeful, and to not sink beneath the despair around you? What are you doing right now to stay sane, to remain hopeful, to not sink beneath the weight of despair?
Just brought that in mind. I mean, I've always felt that I had a personal relationship with Jesus, and I've attended a lot.
Oh, sorry.
A very close personal relationship. I moved away from some good churches I went to because they moved away from Jesus. And I never stopped feeling that I had that personal relationship until I came here, like a week or two before I was to have epidural surgery. I had it now. And I wouldn't be here if I had not gone through that. But then I started questioning, why? Why do I want an extra 5 or 10 or 15 years? I mean, I have children. They are on a different political side than me, but we have transcended that so that we have a relationship again. I think you can reach that. Anyway, but I felt guilty that, I've been given a second chance and wondering why I wanted that second chance. Because I feel like I failed my children somehow in not teaching them what they needed to know, not to fall into that trap. And it got to the point where for the very first time, I mean, I've always think when I go back to Jesus of the footsteps of the sand, and when there's only one set, he's holding you. And this happened just in the last 3 days. I had such despair. I thought, I don't know if I can make it 3 or 4 more years of all this despair, and not knowing where to turn, and not really having too many people I could even talk to it about. And so I just prayed when I wake up in the morning. I wait to go to bed at night because I get peace. Then my eyes open in the morning and I think, oh God, another day. And so I just instead said, God, this time I don't know what to believe. I don't know what is real anymore. Where are you in all this? And I just said to him, this is one time when I'm just going to need you to carry me. When my footsteps are not going to be here, I'm going to need you to carry me. And it got me through.
Thank you, Beverly. Well, we're so glad that you're here. And for all of us, wherever we line up in our faith story, these days have a way of challenging whatever our assumptions were about the existence of a loving God, or just about the goodness of humanity. I think all of us are grieving an old story to some degree. And so we come here grieving the old story, but there is a new story in front of us. And so I think the time that you're here and the time that we're here, a lot of people who were alive yesterday are not alive today. And what that means is we have been given this opportunity that they don't have. So we have no other choice but to say, what is in this day for us? Who are we going to be? And that's really the only question that we have to ask is, who do I choose to be in the middle of this life? There is no other question that we can really answer. The mysteries that we will wrestle with all the time, they will evade us to a degree, but who am I going to show up to be? Who am I going to let people experience through the ripples of my life? Who else wants to share? What are you doing? Thank you for doing this, Valerie. You helped to push down the new carpet.
Yes. I was going to say I've been gardening and doing some other things, but in conjunction with what you said, I had been in a pretty dark spot, although hopeful before the election, and then realized that I really needed community, and that's when I showed up here, and I'm stuck. I'm not going anywhere. Y'all are stuck. Yeah, and then as an additional thing, I was fortunate enough to find a used camper van, and it is my escape pod.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm still learning how to use it. I drove it to Maryland over the last week, and I've managed that part of it. Now I have to figure out which of the 3 batteries I'm supposed to be using. But anyway, it's given me this lift that's just been tremendous.
Well, and that's the 2 things there. We always say this, and I remind you, community is medicinal, right? There is something restorative about being with people, even if we're going to gather to talk about how horrible everything is. Because even in that, we begin, wow. That gives me a power and gravitas that I did not normally have. I wanted to say, Luke, I'm your father. Well, what happens is when we gather in community, even if we're talking, you might want to take that down, Joe, it's still doing whatever it's doing. We already, during this gathering, we have laughed. And you would think that a group of people who care about what we care about would come together just to be morose. And maybe we want to be. But the truth is, we're reminded about other people. There's a buoyancy to what happens when we gather together. So I love that. And I love the idea of something new that you've done, because sometimes it's about saying, okay, this is not the day that I thought I was going to have. This is not the life I thought I was going to be living, but there is a day to be lived in. And so what are we going to do that's different? One more, then I'll share a couple thoughts. Then we'll snuggle up to me. I'm sorry.
I don't want to give you feedback here.
That's okay.
It's great. Well, I was just thinking the other version with Beverly. I really wake up every day wondering if I can protect my kids. I think everybody's feeling that.
Yeah.
And that I can't let go of that. That's the biggie for me. My life is in a place where I'm so happy. I'm finally writing. I'm doing what I wanted to do all my life. So yay, I'm happy. But my husband and I are, as he struggles through his cancer, we're going to leave the country, and that's overwhelming. I mean, I love living in North Carolina, and I grew up here, but it's just so much transition, and I don't think it's fair.
Yeah, Sue. You can take a rest for a minute. Thank you. I think that all of us are trying to figure out what is the responsibility of being a person of privilege. And there is the weight of the world, and then there's the weight of the small world, the people who we know and love, the people we care for and feel particularly responsible to. And right now it can be difficult to figure out what is my responsibility to the larger world, to the systemic injustice, to the people who don't have the luxury of even considering other plans, but yet our responsibility to make sure that our children and our grandchildren are in a place of safety that we maybe are afraid that they won't. So I feel all of that. And so that perfectly, Sue, thank you, leads me into this beginning thoughts that I had for you on grief and gratitude over who you were. I had a friend I hadn't talked to in a while, and he texted me and he simply said, "I miss you, John." And I said, "Me too." And I texted back, like many truthful things, that reply was housed in humor, but it left a lingering aftertaste of regret. See, I was joking, but I wasn't kidding. And I wonder if that resonates with you. The grief of remembering the person you used to be before this sickening season began. Wondering what in the hell happened to the previous iteration of yourself. When I think about the millions of people that I've been fortunate to cross paths with over the past decade doing the work that I do, there is a through line of loss. Whether it was saying goodbye to someone's idea of God or country or family, or to a belief in the goodness of people, or to their sense of optimism about the future, or maybe saying goodbye to relationships they once felt fully at home around. Many people feel like they're attending a long-running funeral that never really ends. There's always something else to grieve over. But with all the sadness that they've shared with me, the greatest mourning I've sensed in people is the loss of their former selves. There's a cost to enduring the unceasing storm of constitutional crises and acts of treason and atrocities against vulnerable people and cultic indoctrination of tens of millions of people. And in our earnest and valiant efforts to confront the ugliness around us, we've been transformed, and not always for the better. Oh, sure, these days have helped us clarify our convictions, right? They've helped us distill what truly matters to us. They've enabled us to tap into strength and perseverance we'd likely never have discovered otherwise. But they've also beaten the hell out of us in the process. When I consider the person I was a decade ago and compare him to the person in the mirror today, aside from looking 40 years older, I can't help but notice that this version of me doesn't laugh as easily as the former. This version of me is less naive about his friends and family members. This version of me finds it more difficult to give people the benefit of the doubt. This version of me doesn't see the horizon of history as wide open as he used to. And so I don't know if you feel any of that. I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about grieving the version of myself and feeling a bit guilty about losing the earlier one along the way. But I also know exactly how it happened. I know how I lost him. He had to watch his former church friends collectively sell their souls to a serial predator as if he was the second coming. That version of me sat at dozens of holiday tables listening to uncles and in-laws deliver well-rehearsed racist rants as easily as breathing. That version of me scrolled through hundreds of hours of the most baseless conspiracy theories about face masks and vaccines and rigged elections and child trafficking networks. That version of me overheard his white neighbors of stratospheric privilege rambling about the dangerous immigrants supposedly overrunning our town. And as I inventory 10 years of exposure to senseless cruelty and prolific discrimination, it suddenly makes perfect sense what happened to that former version of myself. He gradually faded away in the face of too much hatred, and that hatred winning too many times. So today, friends, I am missing and mourning that younger, more hopeful version of myself, and sometimes I'm even worried that a less optimistic iteration of me will also be coming. You may be grieving over the loss of the person you used to be. I wonder what you miss about your former self. I wonder what you would say to prepare that former self. But you know what? The other option is to welcome the current version of ourselves, to acknowledge the more aware, more awakened, more burdened human being, because we are that person who is less blinded by privilege or ignorance or toxic positivity than they once were. I had a friend say to me, John, I'm a middle-aged white guy, and I like myself now better than I did the version of me 10 years ago because I know how much I didn't know about how lucky I was and how much hurt people were experiencing. And so I guess right now all I can do and all any of us can do is wield all the goodness and all the courage and all the faith that we can muster right now and hope that that's enough. Gandhi says, you must not lose faith in humanity. Humanity is an ocean. If a few drops of the ocean are dirty, the ocean does not become dirty. But I don't think we should focus on humanity because we have very little control over humanity. I think we should focus on our humanity. How human can I be right now? So I wonder, what do you think about your former self? What do you think about the person you've become? Does anyone want to share anything about identity or who they have become or who they miss? Just put up your hand and we'll get you the microphone.
I'm Cindy, and I want to share an image I had when, John, you were speaking about past, present, and future self. And you know when you look back at pictures, and at that time you thought you looked bad, you were maybe embarrassed about something about yourself, you thought you weren't the right something. Then you look back and you're like, damn, I look good compared to now. So I'm just wondering if maybe my future self will look back at me now and think, wow, she was laughing and she was in community, which is good for her. And so maybe I guess it feels better if I think about what makes me feel good now and to just kind of do more of that.
I love that, Cindy. And I was just, as I was preparing to come here, one of the children's lessons I was going to give was on myself at different ages, because I had these pictures of me on this little baby blanket, and I was going through my timeline and going, I couldn't do anything on my own then. And then as I got a little older, I could do some things, but I sure needed a lot of help. And then what happens is today, at 55 years old, I can lie to myself and think I don't need help, but I do. And there's something about admitting, hey, you're doing the best you can. Every moment of your life, you were shown up in a day you had never been to before, right? And so I love the idea of saying, hey, cut yourself a break. You're really doing a great job. In fact, when you have kids, you realize that. You go, my parents didn't have any clue what they were doing. I looked up to them as people of wisdom, and they were going, we're just trying to get through this day. So I think there's a mercy we should have for our current selves, realizing we will look back and say, you were doing the best you could. Anyone else want to share? Sally?
I'm thinking that I'm getting a little bit better at handling depression or whatever. My first response is to scream and yell, but my cat really is not a very good listener. So what I've learned over the years is that if I have the energy, if I can do something for somebody else, so I'm making an album, or I'm baking something, or I'm sewing something for people they may not have known they wanted or want at all, but anyway. So I've been very busy doing whatever, and that invariably, if I can get the energy to do that, that will bring me out of it just makes me feel better. So that's my go-to response now. And so it's interesting. I hope it'll save me coming up, because when I go to George's funeral, I think I may be the only non-MAGA person there.
Wow.
And I don't want to jump in with him. I mean, I miss him, but I don't want to join him in that way. But anyway, I'm going to try to concentrate on being kind and making somebody else feel better, and then I always feel better myself. That's the only solution I've found.
Thank you, Sally. Looks like we've got some over here. Kathleen says, can't hear the speaker. Oh, better, good. David says, take the dog for walks and rides in the car. If I get the brakes fixed on the motorcycle, I'll be riding that later today. Kathleen, I garden and work on my community being a good one. Exercise helps sometimes, but definitely getting outside helps. Please put comments in the chat. I miss the person I was a few years ago. I miss the life I had. Thank you, David.
I know I've already spoken, but I do want to speak again. The thing that I miss, I have a small family. I've got my sister, that's one of them, 2 sisters and a niece and their spouses. We're all liberal. And then I've got my world, my 2 kids and 5 grandchildren. And trying to raise my children, I was always telling them to be kind, to never bully, to stand up for people. My son, I think that because he was a boy, when he was in his mid to late teens, I had people in the town coming up to me telling me all the time, I need to tell you what your son did the other day. Incredible, kind things. And now they're, but I beat myself up a lot because I think I didn't realize that I needed to teach them history they didn't know, that I know. They don't come from the same perspective. And it breaks my heart every day because their kids believe what they believe. When my son started out, when he ran the first time, he was not for them, and my grandkids were not. My daughter was at that time because she married into a family of privilege, and it's just I'm living in one of my daughter's house because they're builders, one of their houses, and I had this grand idea that there were going to be some big happy family gatherings, and they don't speak to my sister anymore. I have a relationship with them again, but I had to make that happen beyond the other, we just don't talk about the other. But I had these grandiose ideas of big happy family get-togethers in my yard, and I bought all this yard furniture, everything, and all of a sudden I realized how silly of me to do that, how naive of me to think that this is going to go away. That there's going to be peace made in my family again, and that's what I wanted more than anything.
Well, one of the greatest lessons that I was taught by a friend, he said, you're responsible to people, you're not responsible for people. And the truth is, we can barely control our own response to the world. We can't control anyone else's. And the moment we let go of that and we say, my only responsibility is to them and show them my humanity, that's the only thing that I can do. So thank you for sharing that. I want to give you a couple of thoughts on how I try to stay human, because really what we're responding to is inhumanity. We're responding to dehumanization. And so one of the things I would like you to think about this week is to practice empathy as loudly as possible. See, this current movement is marked by malice, right? It's marked by cruelty. And so compassion and kindness are bold acts of resistance. And the wisdom, I think, right now is to look for the gaps we see in the world, and we can see them quite easily, right? We see the gaps in justice and kindness and mercy and generosity. And so then we move to fill those gaps in the small places within our reach. It's not about fixing a nation. It's not about saving the world. It's about the small world that is within our hands and within our reach. So step out into your local community. You can do that alone or with like-hearted people and perform acts of goodness and kindness, especially for those who are overlooked and excluded and silenced right now. We can lament the circumstances that we are in, but we are people of profound privilege in this room, most of us. And we all have a greater amount of privilege than others, and we know who is under critical duress right now. So what can we do to bring peace to those who are under duress? And the second thing is to stop waiting. We can procrastinate away our response to the world by our paralysis of fear and anxiety. And actually, procrastination is the fascist's best friend. The onslaught of urgency and the inflection of emergency in our lives, all the things that we are called to pay attention to, is by design. And so what we need to be is focused on how can I respond in this day, now. Not what I don't know, not what I can't do. What bits of activism can I connect with right now? So today that means do some research online, contribute to entities you believe are doing great work fighting discrimination, bigotry, and injustice. Make a commitment to an organization or political entity or faith-based group. Every day you allow yourself to be paralyzed by inaction, you give cruelty a head start. And so resist the apathy around you by caring enough to move now. What should I do right now? You're asking yourself. What you should do is something. Anything that is a gesture of movement in response to the hatred of the world is the right thing to do. The other thing I think you should do, and I'm trying to do this, is to cultivate gratitude. See, it's impossible to be grateful and hopeless at the same time. With the deluge of bad news and seemingly limitless capacity for cruelty that we're being exposed to, it can be easy to lose sight of all that is good and beautiful and right in this moment. We are a beleaguered nation, but we still have so much goodness in this room alone. There's going to be plenty of time to lament all that's terribly wrong and to work in opposition to it. But as a willing act of defiance today, look around and find reason to be grateful for what is, even if nothing changed. Who do you know who is showing you courage? Who do you know is modeling grace? Who is living with dignity and decency? Who is inspiring you? Who is practicing radical acts of humanity? As you tell yourself a story about how terrible things are, don't forget to include them as dissenting information. The other thing is, don't you dare lose your joy, friends. See, the battle we're fighting is against a misery movement made of perpetually bitter human beings whose only posture is one of grievance, and we cannot be those people. The mission of the leadership of this country right now that we are lamenting is to dishearten and demoralize people, to slowly suffocate the joy out of them until they lose the light inside them that makes them a threat. And one of the largest middle fingers you can give to hatred is to hold on to your joy at any cost. Because joy, unlike happiness, does not require ideal conditions or favorable circumstances. It is a decision that experiential evidence makes counterintuitive. But what could you do to model joy today? Confucius says, to put the world in order, we must first put the nation in order. But to put the nation in order, we must first put our families in order. And to put our families in order, we must first cultivate our personal life. We must first set our hearts right. I love that because it means everything out there is secondary to my heart and my posture toward the world. What are you thinking about right now? I'm going to go over here. I keep trying. Okay, I don't know what to say anymore. It's just gone. I have no idea how to get out of this mess. I'm not going to admit to something I didn't do. So David, it sounds like you are in a place of frustration, a lack of words. I think, David, my suggestion to you would be to not worry about justifying yourself in front of anyone, that you don't have to earn or deserve respect as a human being, and to simply accept the fact that you are an original, once in history, never to be repeated creation, and there's something good in that you can celebrate. Rita says, I keep trying to talk to close friends and help them understand the cruelty coming out of this administration. And she goes right back, illegal immigrants, economy, and everyone should be arrested. Do I just give up on her and only to discover in conversations she is truly racist, mean, and nasty about her decisions? I would like John to comment on that. Okay, Rita, I'm sorry, that's all the time we have. Rita, here's the thing. We all have stories like that. We all have people across from us we are looking at in disbelief. And should I give up on them? Here's the thing. People say to me, are people unreachable? And I always say, everyone is reachable, but not everyone is reachable right now. So you may have reached a point in a relationship with this person where they are no longer receptive to you, or they no longer respect you enough to hear you. But as long as they are willing to still hear you, they're not closed yet. But I think there is an ebb and flow to many of our relationships. Some people, I have people in my life, we are not in communication right now because this season is not conducive to it. Maybe that's because they are so intolerant, or maybe because what they're bringing up in me is so negative that I know it's not helpful for me. So I'm stepping away, but I'm also stepping into other situations and relationships that I do have receptivity in. So really, it's not about saying, when do I give up on them? It's saying, do they still respond to my humanity? Do they still respect me enough to listen? But I don't want to ever think that anyone is beyond help. And here's why. Everyone in this room thinks something very different theologically or politically than they did years ago, or they probably wouldn't be here. We've all grown, we've all evolved, and we have to give people, as much as we can, the option of growing, of learning, of becoming a better person. So what do we do now? We know the brokenness. Did you?
Well,
Go ahead. Sue. No, please.
I just wanted to share that I've been involved with a political group for a long time, and someone said to me, well, why don't they lead more of the protests? And I kind of gave my reason, and he thought that was an icky reason. Can you guys hear me? Okay, yeah. Something's going on with my hearing right now. So what I decided to do, I was so upset, and I love community. You know, I know a lot of friends I work with are introverts, and they don't like community. They don't like to be around people, and I try to respect that. But what I've started is kind of a salon in my own home, and we meet at certain times, and we're breaking down the issue. That's one of the things that they're doing, is they're throwing so much at us, and it's overwhelming. So we're each taking a subject and we're studying it, and that person will, and we start with Project 2025. That's where it all starts. And they roll out the next meeting. They lead it. And we go from there. And that dissipates a lot of the angst, and it shows us, it breaks down the ways we can push back rather than feeling so overwhelmed. So I think it starts, as you say, with community. All right.
It's Loretta. I just have to give myself strength by thinking there are many more good people in the world than what we see on the news every day. And I've been involved with mindfulness meditation for many years, and I have a kind of shrine in my front hallway, and it has this statue of Kuan Yin, the Bodhisattva of compassion, and a little scroll in front tied in red ribbon that says hope on it. And that's what I have. That's what I do.
Thank you, Loretta. Appreciate you. Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius had this quote I read, and I love it because he said, "Think of the life you have lived until now as over, and as a dead person, see what's left as a bonus and live it according to nature. Love the hand that fate deals you and play it as your own for what could be more fitting." So he says, with all the tragedy and all the suffering, imagine that that is over and now you're restarting. And this life, you have exactly what you need to begin. Did you want to share something?
No, she was waving at me. I haven't seen her in a year.
Oh, okay. I thought someone was like, "Dang, get him off of there."
John,
I know that this community is a community of empathy, and because of that, you're susceptible to injury. See, there are a lot of people who don't have what you have. They don't have the compassion you have, and right now, you know what they're doing? They're sleeping restfully. They're playing pickleball. They're going to Cracker Barrel, and they're living their lives as if nothing changed. And that's the problem, because you know that that's not reality. But here, friends, I want you to remember this. It doesn't mean you shouldn't sleep restfully. It doesn't mean you shouldn't play pickleball. It doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy amazing meals. Because our response right now is to live as humanly and creatively as possible, because that too is resistance. We are not made to be sullen and depressed and downtrodden all the time. We need to make sure that we have a buoyancy of spirit that says, I'm not going to let them take away the best of me, because that is what we have. That is the antidote to all that afflicts us. So I want to thank you for your empathy. I want to thank you for the fact that you're not who you were 10 years ago. But I want you to take care of who you are right now. Because living well isn't just the best revenge, it's also the greatest resistance. So may we all live the best day that we can live today, and look down and see that wherever we are standing is holy ground. Go in peace.